Hey everybody, it's Becky from Icing on Top Becky's Cakes, and today we're going to make a Fireflies Breaking free sugar art sculpture, and we're going to use Isomalt on this one. And yes, Isomalt is yummy like candy too, so it makes this fun. I'm using a Simicakes pre-cooked Isomalt because it is awesome and easy to use, and I'm just going to put it in this silicone bowl here. And all you have to do is pop it in the microwave. That's why I love working with it. I'm going to get out my mat, and then I'm going to get this metal ring and just coat my metal ring with some vegetable oil, and that'll keep the Isomalt from sticking to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that Isomalt in my silicone bowl, and we're just going to pop that in the microwave. And Simicake Isomalt is awesome because it comes with instructions right on it. So you just heat it at 30-second intervals and then 15 seconds following that until it is boiling, because you want to make sure you bring it to a boil, but don't pour it when it's bubbling. Wait until most of the bubbles have popped and then pour it. And remember, Isomalt is super, super, super hot. You can't get this on your gloves, so you got to be super careful when you're pouring it. And yes, I'm wearing gloves. If you want extra protection, also wear cotton gloves underneath it. It makes it a little easier to handle too. I just couldn't find my cotton gloves today. So I just used the regular gloves. I just had to be super careful. And then I'm gonna just use my torch to get any other bubbles out that might be there, and that'll just pop any extra bubbles by torching them lightly. Now we're going to let that cool and sit, and we're going to get our clear Isomalt. I'm going to do the exact same thing with that, only this time I'm going to pour it directly onto my mat, my silicone mat, and I just waited till the bubbles weren't popping, so it's not like super boiling when I pour it. And then once I get all my melted Isomalt on here, I'm going to let it cool by kind of moving the mat back and forth, and then I'm going to start folding it in on itself. And you can tell when it starts to get tacky enough to handle is when it starts to stick to itself really good when you fold it back and forth. So at that point, then you can gather it together with your gloves and start pulling it back and forth to even out the heat. And once you feel the heat is evened out, you want to roll it into a ball and get it ready to put your sugar pump directly into the ball, but you have to make sure we heat that copper piping on the sugar pump before we insert it into our Isomalt ball. And we want to do that process fairly fast because you want that ball to still be really, really warm. And if it's not warm enough, you want to put it under a heat lamp. I don't have my heat lamp on me today because I worked rather fast on this one. But if you want to work slower on a project, or you have more pieces you want to pull and stuff, it's really great to have that heat lamp nearby. Then you can keep putting your pieces under the heat lamp as you work. Now that we have it into a nice round ball, I'm going to quickly get out my sugar pump, and we're just going to heat that copper piping with our torch. And as you can see, there is caramelized sugar still on that, and that's great because we don't want to wipe that off. We want that on there to help grab the sugar on the ball. So I'm just going to completely heat up that whole pipe in, roll that ball a little to make sure the heat is still even, insert that. I want this copper piping for this project to be pretty close to the bottom, but not too close to the bottom that when we pump it'll break through the other side. We want there to be enough at the bottom because the bottom is actually going to be the top of our mason jar, and so that's going to be more flat. And as we blow, we're going to form that so that it's more flat at what is going to be the top of the mason jar. So the bottom of the mason jar is actually where the pipe is coming out right here. And so I'm just going to flatten that area towards the top because that is going to be the top of the mason jar, and we're going to do a pump. And you want to be patient when you're pumping air into this, because if you pump it too fast, you're going to find that one end of the wall or the other end of the wall is getting more narrow too quickly. And if you get it too narrow, you're going to end up popping the whole sugar sculpture. You don't want to do that. It's not fun to pop it after you've been working on it. But if that does happen to you, you can just take it off the sugar pump and then put that sugar back in the microwave and start the process again. So you haven't wasted your isomalt by it popping, but it just wastes your time a little bit. But this is a learning experience for you if you haven't blown too many bubbles or anything before. So we're just going to continue to pump and form as we go, and I kind of rub it back and forth and making sure that those areas don't get too clear. You see it really getting clear on one side, so I want to rub that back and forth more, otherwise that's going to pop on me. But I do want it thin because I really want to be able to see through this so that it really looks like a real glass jar. So we kind of have to play it here back and forth. We walk on the dangerous side here a little bit. You see how it still moves quite a bit? That means that it's still really soft and not hard enough. So I have to always do a pump here and there if I see it start to collapse. And you're going to see it collapse as you do this because that means that it's still moldable. And it being moldable will help us mold it into the shape that we want it to be, but we have to do that very gently, especially as it starts to get hard. Once it gets completely hard, we can stop pumping, and then we're going to, instead of heating the copper tubing like we would for any of my other blown sugar sculptures, like you've seen the swans or the birds, you would just heat the copper tubing until it's really hot and then ease it out. We're not going to do that this time because we want this to look like a broken glass jar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a metal knife and I'm going to heat that knife, and we are going to cut into this end of the jar because we want it to look like it has dropped and it is broken. The fireflies are flying out of there. So we are going to heat this metal knife and we're going to cut into it. Now, if you want a really, really straight cut, you're just going to do it smoothly and then just keep reheating your knife as you go. But we do not want a really, really straight cut. We want it broken. So you want to use a little force, but not too much force that would completely shatter the entire mason jar. We want a controlled break. And with a controlled break, you might want to reheat your knife a few times and then go in here and then break off some more. But if you press down too hard when your knife is too cool, you're not going to have a controlled break. You're going to shatter the whole thing. So be careful on that when you're cutting it. A controlled break is much easier, and if it's not looking broken enough when you're done, you can heat that knife again and then get in there and cut a little more, because that'll help you do that design. But we're going to use these little broken off pieces too as part of our art. And let's go ahead and take our green piece here. This will pop out because of the vegetable oil, and I'm going to heat these edges here because I wanted it to have a border that kind of resembled grass, and so it's going to be a grass-like border. So we're going to heat these edges, and I'm going to get out my scissors and I'm just going to snip the edges. Now that the edges are soft because we heated it, we're just going to snip it up, snip it, and that'll give us a cool grass texture for the border here. And I really liked how those borders were coming along, so I'm just going to complete the rest of the border that way, and that'll be our grass border. And once we're done with our border, I want to heat the center of this because I want our mason jar to be glued, so it's not going to roll around on me or roll off and really get broken for real. So we're going to go ahead and heat that and place the mason jar on its side. And then we're going to place the little pieces, the broken pieces, strategically where we want them. And then I'm going to paint the lid with gold gel food coloring so that the lid kind of has that golden lid that mason jars often have. And then what I want to do is I want to get some red Isomalt because I want a frayed red ribbon that's kind of look like it's been frayed and fallen off too. So we're doing the exact same thing with that Isomalt, and we're just gonna pull this into a ribbon like texture. So it should be fairly simple because I'm just going to pull it long and then I'm going to give it a little bit of a twist, and then we're going to just put it on our lid here. Kind of stretch it out evenly, and then we're gonna just do a little bit of twisting, and then we're gonna make it into what looks like a frayed ribbon here after we do some twisty bits here. And now I want to be able to kind of wrap it a little bit around that lid, so I'm gently heating this up so that I can move it a little bit. Don't try to move it if it's too hard though. If it's too hard, you're just gonna snap it, and we don't want to break that ribbon. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on the lid of our jar here, and it's looking so cool. I love how it actually looks like a glass mason jar. Just Isomalt is so much fun to work with. And then I'm going to get these little fairy lights. They are LED starry lights, and I'm going to put these inside the mason jar. I think I'm going to wrap most of it around that battery pack, and then have some of them come out and start to fly up like the fireflies, like, yes, we got out, we are free. And there is our summer-themed Isomalt sculpture called Fireflies Breaking Free. So thank you so much for joining me on this one. If you enjoyed the Isomalt or the sugar art tutorial, please check out my other sugar art tutorials, and there's a lot of fun ones in there.